Welcome back to another stimulating edition of Weather for Weather Geeks, the Hump Day edition here on Wednesday evening. It's the 23rd day of January, and, well, once again, we've got plenty to talk about here in the dead of winter. Our month-long break in mid to late December and early January is ancient history at this point, and there's a lot to keep track of. First things first, at this time of the year, we're oftentimes talking about how much ice there is or is not on the Great Lakes, including, of course, the most important lake for our weather, Lake Erie. And we're finally starting to see a fair amount of ice forming, despite the mild weather today. The trend, of course, has been colder lately. So the shallow west end of Lake Erie, a reasonable amount of ice now, some real shallow ice off the coast of Cleveland and heading up towards Erie. It gets a little bit thicker on the north coast of Lake Erie. Now, this open water is going to really start disappearing, I think, over the next week or so, and it's possible by the end of January or the first week of February that the lake will essentially be frozen over. We have winter sometimes when that does not occur. We have some winters, of course, in which it does, and we have a chance of seeing Lake Erie go completely frozen here in the next couple of weeks. Almost a 55-degree difference from low temperatures yesterday morning to high temperatures today. Just before the start of this graph was when our lows were yesterday morning. It got down to 5 below at the airport. This afternoon and early this evening, it got into the upper 40s. Yeah, that's an enormous difference. And there was a lot of melting that went on out there today from our snowpack, and of course rain has been falling into that snowpack as well, and everything's just real soggy and muddy and just a mess out there. And a flood watch is in effect for our entire television viewing area through the day tomorrow. There's about an inch and a half worth of water locked up in that snowpack before it started melting. That, combined with the rain that we've seen, can cause some localized flooding issues, some areas of poor drainage, certainly, where snow is caked up against the sewers and the drains. You're going to see standing water in a lot of places, and even some river flooding issues could crop up over the next 24 to 36 hours. Some Doppler radar estimated rain totals here, the highest amounts in the northern part of our viewing area, but we'll add on to these totals this evening. One of the spots that we oftentimes look at for possible high water is around the Mahoning River in the Leavittsburg area, and as of 5:15 it was at 3.84 feet, but it's going to rise pretty quickly overnight, reaching flood stage overnight into tomorrow morning, peaking at just shy of 12 feet, kind of right in the middle of minor flood stage before slowly receding. So that's a spot. Eagle Creek up there in southwestern Trumbull County, also a spot that there likely will be some flood warnings issued for this evening and into the overnight. As of 7:05, raining lightly to moderately across all of northeast Ohio and western PA. The loop shows a couple of things. Well, one, yes, it's going to rain all evening. Two, look at the cold coming our way. Look at the temperature drop over the last 3 hours in Cincinnati. 51 to 40 over the matter of 3 hours. We're going to see similar drops here overnight tonight as the cold air wraps in. A couple of concerns tonight, a change over to snow and a refreeze of the slush and all the water that's sitting around. Now, it could be a lot worse. If we were seeing the kind of flash freeze in which temperatures drop suddenly into the teens, it would be real problematic. We'll see a little more of a gentle fall tonight. It's going to be fairly quick, but it's not going to be way below freezing. So that will hopefully mitigate some of the refreeze issues out there tonight. Now, the changeover to some snow, this looks a little slower than it did last night. It looks like it's going to be delayed until maybe between 3 and 4 in the morning on average, but once it changes over, it should snow at a pretty decent clip for a couple of hours. I think this tapers off and ends from west to east right around or just before daybreak tomorrow morning. So if you're a morning commuter on Thursday morning, and especially if it's before daybreak, say before 7:45, it'll probably still be snowing, and then not long after it'll start to taper off. As far as how much snow goes, our thoughts really haven't changed much since last night. Here's a look at our model spread. As you would expect with snow beginning in a handful of hours, our models are tightening up here with their ideas. And yeah, I think an inch to an inch and a half is going to be pretty common. I can't rule out someone trying to get 2 out of this. That's kind of our range, 1 to 2. I think most places will be closer to an inch, inch and a half than 2. Absolute most 3, but I think that that's a pretty small chance. It's going to be an inch to inch and a half, at most 2 in most of the area. All right, so the snow tapers off and ends in the morning. The rest of the day tomorrow, just bleh. Temperatures going nowhere, holding in the 20s. Wind chills diving down into the teens. Maybe some random flurries here and there. Got another Arctic cold front heading our way towards tomorrow night, and this will cause an uptick in the snow shower activity tomorrow night into very early Friday before daybreak. And while accumulations should be modest with this, impacts can be higher because it's going to be cold. Every flake can stick. A lot of this is coming at night. And just this is going to cause, I think, some slick travel on untreated surfaces throughout the region tomorrow night and first thing Friday morning. Rest of Friday, just another cold, windy day. I've got 15 for a high on Friday, and that's not far from our low in the morning. It's going to be a day much like tomorrow, in which temperatures from morning to afternoon will hardly move. Generally just kind of holding steady. Lake effect will set up for a while Friday into Friday night up in far northern Ohio and into northwest PA, southwest New York. Now this system on Saturday doesn't look like much on our model here, but I think there can be an outbreak of real light snow or flurries. And again, it's going to be so cold on Saturday that, you know, a lot of this can stick. Even if accumulations are under an inch, every flake can try to stick, and that could cause some localized slick travel. Pretty decent little brief lake effect event with a pretty strong westerly flow and not much northwest. This is going to be mostly aimed at northwest PA and southwest New York, especially southwest New York. And I suspect these numbers are a little too low. There's probably going to be some places that get a foot or so worth of snow south of Buffalo, kind of between Buffalo and Erie on I-90. If you've ever taken 90 in the winter between Erie and Buffalo, you know it can be kind of a harrowing experience, and that should be the case at the end of this week as well. All right, so wind chills tomorrow night and first thing Friday morning drop down into the single digits. We probably don't drop below 0 for wind chills until later on Friday as the wind kicks up, and those wind chills will probably bottom out for a time Friday night, maybe at -10 or so. Wind should slacken some by Saturday morning, so the wind chills should be a little bit better. A lot to keep track over the next several days, so I made this graphic today. Tonight, inch or two of snow by daybreak. Wet and slushy areas can refreeze. What I didn't include on this graphic is tomorrow night's cold front that could bring us some localized coatings and dustings and make for some slick spots. Over the weekend, there's going to be 2 Alberta Clipper systems that move through. One on Saturday, one on Sunday. Both of them very weak, but with as cold as it's going to be, they can be somewhat impactful. Maybe there's a, you know, upwards of half an inch or an inch or so worth of snow with each. Well, that could still cause some slick spots on area roadways. And then on Monday, we've got a warm front heading our way, and I think snow becomes likely again in the afternoon. May change over to rain Monday night as the temperature keeps rising. We'll probably get above freezing Monday night, and then beyond that, the story becomes the cold. I posted earlier on today about the Weather Channel app causing, once again today, people to ask me, oh, you know, how much snow are we getting on Monday? I see this. The Weather Channel says this. And, you know, earlier today, the Weather Channel app, if you clicked on it, it said something like 3 to 5 inches on Monday. And then, of course, 3 hours later, you click on it, it says according to an inch, because it's just automated. It runs on, it's dependent on each run of the models. And, you know, you're never going to get me to, you know, comment necessarily on a Weather Channel app forecast, snow forecast 5 days out. You're not going to get me to, you know, say, well, I could see that, or that looks right to me. You know, that just, you know, those kind of apps are not to be relied upon for snow accumulations, especially 5 days out. Count on the Storm Tracker 21 app. If we have certainty about something, whether it be an accumulation of snow or whatnot, you'll see it in the app. If we don't have certainty about how much snow there's going to be or anything else, you're not going to see it in the app. We're not going to have 1 to 3 inches of snow or whatever for 5 days from now on our app. Almost never will we do that. All right, so next week, let's talk about the cold. This has the potential to be the coldest snap that we've seen in about 4 years. The potential is there. I wouldn't lock that in just yet, but the potential is there. It's on the table. It's going to be cold. It's going to be, you know, the kind of cold that we haven't seen very often in the winters over the last few years, and the overall pattern looks pretty cold and pretty stormy into early February. Now, I'm going to show you the European model here, temperatures and wind chills for next week. Now, a little caveat here. The European model, generally a superior model, is just a model, and it has its flaws. And one of its flaws is it has a cold bias when it comes to temperatures over a snowpack. It oftentimes is way too cold for temperatures when it also has a snowpack modeled. So these numbers on Wednesday may be too cold by some degree. No pun intended. But this is taken literally what the model is spitting out, a high of about 1 here on Wednesday. And look at these numbers off to the west. Now, all of these numbers are probably too cold by some extent. How much are they too cold by remains to be seen. And it has Wednesday night into Thursday morning, a -11 here. You know, I can't discount this. This may be in the ballpark. But again, if you factor in the bias that this model does have, chances are it's a little too cold. And that same goes for the wind chills. Some of these numbers are just ridiculous. Middle of next week, look at these numbers Wednesday afternoon. You know, this is bad enough. But, I mean, it has minus 40 wind chills printed out in parts of the upper Midwest during the afternoon hours on Wednesday. And then Wednesday night into Thursday morning has a minus 48 wind chill in Chicago Sound, minus 38 locally. The chances of these numbers being right are pretty slim. I did want to show you this just to show you the extent of the cold air that's coming next week. It likely is not going to be this bad, but it's possibly pretty bad. It could be the kind of cold that if you don't have well-insulated pipes, we could be dealing with, frozen pipes. It's the kind of cold that sometimes people's cars don't start. Even though it's not likely to be as cold as those numbers I just showed you, it's still probably our coldest couple of days of the winter, and possibly our coldest weather overall that we've seen since February of 2015. So keep that in mind, and of course, as we get closer to that, as is the case when we get closer to any weather event, our confidence will increase. I suspect you'll see the models kind of come around a little bit towards reality, especially the European model. It's going to be really cold, probably not as cold as some of those crazy numbers I just showed you. They're fun to look at, but 8 days out, take them with a big grain of salt. That's it for tonight's Weather for Weather Geeks. Have a great Wednesday night, everyone. I'll see you back here tomorrow evening.